upon is our habits, particularly the food habits or malnutrition. How is it connected to the point that we are discussing? And what are all the preventive aspects that one can consider? All are again discussed. Let's see how much this proper diet and nutrition can help us to solve this problem or to manage this problem. So the point I was asked to speak is that micronutrients. Again, you are all familiar with this terminology and words, etc., etc. For the sake of taking on to the point, let me just say a few words. Micronutrients are anyway essential dietary components needed in a very small quantity. That's why we call them as micronutrients. Be it vitamins, minerals, or some of the phytochemicals such as carotenoids. Some of the fatty acids are also which we take in a small quantity like glycerol, etc., etc. And they do not contribute to calories, but they play a critical role in many of the biological processes or physiological aspects in the form of cofactors or in the form of the structural components in the proteins, etc., etc. And each micronutrient has a very specialized role, and they regulate many metabolic processes in the body, to begin with growth, development, immune function, and so on and so forth. And they are also essential for optimal physiological functions of the pancreas and insulin. This is the point that I would like to highlight here, because you have heard this morning, I am sure yesterday also, that alterations in carbohydrates, fat, and protein metabolism that results in defects in the secretion of insulin, its function, or both. So therefore, there is a pertinent connection between micronutrients to pre-diabetes, diabetes, or diabetic complications. Instead of going into highlighting each and every micronutrient, I put only one slide to highlight the concept of the micronutrients and pre-diabetes. Let us assume that you have a micronutrient deficiency, and basically micronutrient deficiency can occur due to variety of reasons. To begin with, dietary inadequacy, some gastric problems, or malabsorption, infection, or chronic inflammation, etc., etc. So, whatever may be the reason, when there is a micronutrient deficiency, it can affect the many processes like inflammation, and everyone said oxidative stress, disruption of cell composition that can lead to autoimmune aspects such as type 1 diabetes. But the pertinent point for today's talk is that these micronutrient deficiencies can lead to the, in addition to inflammation, lead to the disruption of metabolism, particularly endothelial dysfunction, some aspects of angiogenesis have been touched, adiposity, etc., etc., leading to insulin resistance, abnormal glucose metabolism, either it's pre-diabetes, diabetes, subsequently diabetic complications. Some water. So, therefore, I'm not reading all of that is there in the connection of variety of nutrients to diabetes, and also the font size is too small. Thank you. Yes. Instead, I picked up some very pertinent nutrients to highlight. To begin with, when I did a typical search after Dr. Anuradha asked me to speak on this, all the micronutrients, with my limited homework, I found that vitamin D is one which seems to have some reasonable connection to pre-diabetes, diabetes, to the complications. Because it promotes pancreatic beta cell function in several ways, including improving the insulin synthesis and its secretion. Further, it also improves insulin action in target tissues. That's very important, particularly in muscle. Couple of other vitamins, particularly in the group of B, B1, B3, and B6. Of course, B12 we all thought. But when I did this search, I come across that B1 is essential cofactor for several enzymes involved in carbohydrate metabolism, such as glycolysis, cigarette cycle, and required for normal glucose metabolism. B3 facilitates insulin binding and triggers beta cell function, and it improves lipid abnormalities. Actually, even in our animal models, when we are inducing diabetes, to control, I have a balance. We use this in a way to make a type 2 diabetes, because you disturb the pancreas and give this B3 so that you play with it and you make a kind of diabetes that you want in animals. So that's a condition. B6 deficiency was found to disrupt serotonin signaling in pancreas, particularly in islet, and it induces gestational diabetes. In addition, in the morning when you start the metabolic pathways, after B6 is some forms of B6. You have a variety of B vitamins like pyridoxine, pyridoxal pyridoxamine, etc. One of the forms, particularly pyridoxamine, is likely to prevent the protein modification. So there may be a scope for us to think that B6 has something to do with diabetes and pre-diabetes. Of course, in the trace elements or minerals, the most common one that happens to be got some link is magnesium deficiency, which reduces insulin sensitivity, and zinc deficiency is needed. Zinc is needed in the synthesis storage. Of all the trace elements, zinc is directly involved in the insulin synthesis, processing, and function. So it is needed in the synthesis, storage, and secretion of insulin. It protects pancreatic cells from damage. And someone mentioned in the morning that chromium helps in insulin binding to cell receptors and thereby special test glucose uptake. Well, I actually picked up this slide from BMJ. This paper is about, dietary advices for the people of different categories, normal people, people with risk and people with diabetes. But the reason, actually I'm not going to read that, what recommendations they have given here. But the reason I picked up is to make some kind of suggestion for this group. I thought Dr. Mohan is going to be here and he would advise me whether we can do this. Can we use this approach that what is micronutrient deficiency prevalence in general population and how much it is in the people either pre-diabetes or who are at the risk of diabetes or diabetes, then go down to the complications. So that now we know that in that study says about 15.3, if you translate it to somewhere like, I use 1.4 billion as a calculation, so it is 2.5 million if you calculate that way. And then if you take diabetes prevalence anywhere 150 million. Can we take a representative sample of these three categories, that is general population without any issues? Apparently, I take pre-diabetes and then diabetic people, study this micronutrient aspect, how much it translates. Is the issue, we don't have such kind of information. Can we attempt this? That's the idea of me picking up that slide from the BMJ. Now, from here onwards, what do? I don't have anything. I prepared one slide, at the end I will show that. To show you that slide, I have to show you all these slides that I am going to show in the next 5 minutes. So what kind of situation we have in the present situation as far as micronutrient deficiencies are concerned? The one recent one that is available is Comprehensive National Nutrition Survey, which attempted on the children between 1 to 19, and this is supposed to be one of the largest micronutrient surveys ever attempted in our context. Of course, national representative sample. So let me just quickly show you that I picked up, as I said, I started with vitamin D, and if you see the prevalence of vitamin D deficiency in different categories of children, 1 to 4, it is about 14%, 5 to 9 it is about 18%, and in adolescents it is about 25%. And the next one you see very carefully, in urban setup it is more, and in wealthier population it is more. I am trying to make a connection to the diabetes, pre-diabetes and other aspects. Is there anything for us to connect these two? I have no answer, but I am trying to make a point. Then other micronutrients like vitamin A deficiency, I have not shown for every age category, I just put it in the range 14 to 20%. Vitamin D and I have shown. B12 30 to 35% higher in the adolescent groups, that is the older group. And folate deficiency is also, zinc deficiency this much. Of course, there is iron deficiency. That's not, right now is not very important for this point. We have shown this B12 deficiency recently from the CNNS survey, and I am not showing the data. Here, the deficiency is higher in higher age groups, that means in adolescent groups, and more in POTS. And again, I am trying to connect that the diabetes and pre-diabetes is more in males. Can we do something here? I thought Dr. Mohan will be here today. I wanted to catch up with him and sit with him and do something. Because earlier I have not attempted this kind of thinking before Dr. Anuradha called me to make this presentation. Now let me show you quickly about the indicators of malnutrition, something like 35% content in different age diseases, and then what is the wastage and another weight. That is is fine. This is an important issue. That from the same CNMS survey, what do we have? Pre-diabetes 1 in 10, that is about 10%, whereas this in-depth study shows about that is in a different population, about 15%. And diabetes here it shows 1%, I think the in-depth study shows much higher. And very concerning is about 7% there are markers of CKD, that means kidney failure, and 5% hypertension, 3% or 4% in different age groups, high cholesterol. And what is again interesting here is that from the same study, someone, Kumar et al., did an analysis accomplished that with the age and male and female. Again, if you see in males, this is very high. What is that? The prevalence of indicators of these sorts, and also micronutrient deficiencies. So there seems to be something that and again these people go on saying that this is another study from the same CMNS. The interaction between high total cholesterol and B12 deficiency showed highest average probability of pre-diabetes, that is 66%. That means again B12 seems to have some connection with the lipid metabolism, and how much it translates to pre-diabetes, one has to calculate. They say that it could contribute as much as 66%. But this is based on CNS data, where they do not have robust indicators of pre-diabetes and diabetes. Of course, there are some parameters. Now that was about children. What is the situation about the adults? We don't have much information right now. LSI is taking up a big study, which is to be completed in another 1 year or so. But this is a small study done by my group in apparently healthy adults, where you see that this is actually plasma data. This is the status of all the vitamins. We always talk about vitamin D, B12, etc. But B2 is the prevalence of B2 deficiency is almost 50%, followed by B6. Of course, B12 has 5%, folate, vitamin D 30%. For this vitamin D, we have used 1 nanograms as a cutoff. If you use 20 nanograms, it would be higher. Well, again, in the same setup, how does this look like? So, there's about 45% overweight and 3% abdominal obesity. We did not look into pre-diabetic parameters in this study because that was not the idea at the time. We wanted to have an idea of the micronutrient deficiency in a normal population of about 300 population size. But what comes out from this study is that again, is the so-called apparent normal people. Hyperhomocysteine is 50%, which is again linked to many of the vascular diseases that are the commonality with the diabetes and pre-diabetes. And this is again high in males. So, and the next few slides, I'm saying that knowingly or unknowingly, about 10-15 years ago, I started working on a set of diabetic complications, as I said, at the other end of the trajectory. The reason here why we started working on complications of diabetes or even complications of obesity, but I don't have much data. We have not published, we have data on the complications of obesity. We also worked on complications of obesity, but the same reason that morning, as we have said, even obesity, I think you also mentioned what is metabolic syndrome of obesity. Any of the three, that is central obesity, hypertension, hypertriglyceridemia, low HDL, or fasting glucose more than 100. Any three of them can define as metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome can also be a risk as that of the chronic diabetes, resulting in the complications that I mentioned here, whether they are ocular complications, cardiovascular, etc., etc. So even though metabolic syndrome, obesity does not have hyperglycemia, but many of these individuals develop complications similar to that of diabetes. So this was the context when we started a study that we wanted to study the micronutrient status in diabetes complications that includes obesity complications. The idea here is that strict glycemic control is expected to prevent all these complications. But we all know that those of you who follow the DCCT and UKPDS studies, the cohort studies, there is a catch there. Those who have perfect glucose control also have developed some of these complications. Those who have gone off the radar are protected complications. That means there is something beyond glucose control in the development of diabetic complications. That was the idea at that time when we started this work. And as I said, most importantly, insulin resistant metabolic syndrome, whereas you don't have the prior hyperglycemia, but why do they develop these complications? So one idea was that is there a possibility that these individuals they happen to have micronutrient deficiencies they are susceptible to develop diabetic complications compared to those whose micronutrient status is not good. So that was the idea. Therefore, we started evaluating the micronutrient status. When I say micronutrient status, vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, fatty acids. But I will show you some data with the minerals. Here, my interest was on a set of complications like retinopathy, nephropathy, and neuropathy. In addition to these well-characterized three complications, we also have a group with diabetes without any complications, and then of course normal group. Let me show you. This is a typical clinical data. Don't worry much about it. Wherein I am just showing that you have the duration is matched for all the people with diabetes and with and without complications. And of course, you can expect high glucose in diabetic people and HbA1c, insulin, etc. In nephropathy, anyway, you will have more clear. That's not the point here. What I want to show you is that, see this slide, the DRE, that is diabetic retinopathy, compared to the control and diabetes without complication, B12 deficiency was low. When I say B12 levels were low, that means B12 deficiency was high. When I say B12 deficiency was high in diabetic retinopathy too, anyone can question what are you talking about? In our country, we are talking about the B12 deficiency. I am not saying that. Compared to the other groups, the prevalence is much more here. For example, if I translated this prevalence, in control it was about 30-35% what we reported recently, and in diabetes it is about 42% prevalence, whereas in diabetic retinopathy it was 70%. That means there is something. But again the question comes, it says snapshot study, it could be simple association. So subsequently what we did, we created this experimental situation in animals, wherein we created diabetes, B12 deficiency, and combination of these two, to prove whether there is a role for B12 deficiency for aggravating the diabetic retinopathy in diabetic people. Yes, animal data shows, but we still do not have the data from the humans to make a strong point on this. But interestingly, after this retinopathy cohort, we got an interest to see whether this will be the same case with other complications. We did not find such a situation with nephropathy, but of course in case of neuropathy, we found deficiency of B2 and B6. And in nephropathy, I don't know how many clinicians in this group, we got a perplexing situation that actually plasma levels of many vitamins are very high. Later when we started and discussed with all the endocrinologists and all the bits of work, plasma levels in nephropathy case may not give you the right picture. For some reason, some of the vitamins will not be filtered properly, they will be put back to the circulation. Therefore, don't go by plasma levels in a situation like this. Anyway, that's the point. And in case of fat-soluble vitamins, we did not find much. Of course, vitamin D was less in diabetes as well as. Okay, I'm done. Coming to the last point. Now I come back to this slide again. So, as I said, I started from the other end, but now can we do this? Is that situation I am repeatedly saying? I think we should start somewhere. If it's LSI, NSI, or any other, the hospital, we all can think and make a big study of this. That's the point I want to say. But I prepared this slide after Dr. Anuradha because it was almost 3-4 months ago. I had some time. We were working on gestational diabetes. Anyway, there we have to do OGTT. At the time, I thought, why not I also generate some data for this conference. We did this study, pre-diabetes and diabetes. Only small sample. I think in each group we have about 35 to 40 samples. Doesn't matter. Just to give you a flavor. That you see that B6, B12, vitamin D are low in pre-diabetes. Of course, it will be further in diabetes. I made a beginning, but I don't know how much I will travel with this and how much others can take up this. That's what I just want to say. And I will not take much of your time to do all these things. The one last point I want to say that not all micronutrient deficiencies can have, some of them have other way. Now there is a big debate. Not entering into that debate either way, the scientific point what I want to say is that with respect to iron, we have enough. This is a recent annual review of physiology wherein they have categorically mentioned that the risk of diabetes related to iron is evident in most or all tissues that determine diabetes phenotype. Okay, with adipocyte, beta cell, liver playing the central role. That means iron can go the other way, so one has to look into that. Just to summarize, if you want the same abstract, I have put it here, that in the pancreatic beta cell, both deficient and excess iron, there is a possibility for both ends. Contribute to decreased insulin secretion, coupling of blood glucose levels to insulin resistance. This is the point. If you want to read all of the points, you can read it. presentation is with you. The summary is that pre-diabetes is associated with an interplay of micronutrient imbalance that influence glucose metabolism. Several essential micronutrients such as vitamins, minerals, I have not talked about other things like carotenoids, have been implicated in the development or progression of pre-diabetes. As I mentioned, some have got a pertinent or there seems to be a case for vitamin D and B vitamins. Some trace elements such as copper, chromium, insulin, zinc, and of course iron is the other way. So therefore, further studies are needed to investigate. Right now, I am not trying to say anything about the supplementation. Further studies are needed to investigate the complex interplay between micronutrients and glucose metabolism, pre-diabetes, diabetes, and diabetic complications. Thank you very much.